It's time for the new phone show, new phone show, new phone show! Tonight's guest, the Redmi 10. So the Redmi 10 is Xiaomi's entry-level smartphone. Usually this means this is like one of the cheapest Xiaomi smartphones that you can buy. But this year, it is a little bit different because one of the main selling points for this smartphone, I think, has been a little bit compromised. But I will get into that a little bit later. For now, let's just do a quick unboxing. So you shouldn't expect like a super extensive unboxing experience. This is going to be pretty basic because it's a cheap smartphone. So you pop the lid and the first thing you see is the device itself, the Redmi 10. And then there's this divider, pretty standard. There's this box that says powered by Redmi. And if you open up, you'll see that there is a SIM eject tool. You will also see some paperwork and a silicone case. Also included is a charging cable. So this is a USB-C cable, as you can see here. And also a 22.5 watt fast charging brick, even though the smartphone doesn't support 22.5 watt fast charging. Right, so a bit of future proofing for you there, but that's pretty much it with regards to the unboxing. Now onto the star of the show, which is the smartphone, the Redmi 10. So I'll start with the specs. So this smartphone is powered by MediaTek's new Helio G88 processor, which from my understanding is like an updated version of their G80 processor with like a better ISP. But as far as I understand, the performance gains aren't huge, so it should still perform pretty similarly to the G80. There are also two memory configurations available. You've got the base model with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage, or the top spec model with 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage. The good news is that this smartphone also supports memory expansion via a micro SD card, and it's a dedicated slot plus a dual SIM slot, so that means you don't have to give up one of your SIMs if you want to expand memory, which is great. Keeping the lights on is a 5000 mAh battery with support for 18 watts fast charging. Now, the capacity is okay. It's like what you'd expect for a 2021 smartphone. The charging though is a little bit on the slow side. But here's the thing that you have to remember, this is an affordable / entry-level smartphone, so the fact that it's not a 5-watt charger is, I would say, an absolute win. Moving on to the front of the device, you'll find a 6.5-inch IPS display pushing a Full HD Plus resolution. Now, the cool thing about this smartphone, or at least like the bit of like the X factor, is that it has a 90 Hz refresh rate. That means it's a fast refresh rate screen, so you'll be able to see like really fast, really responsive inputs when you turn it on. But I mean, just looking at the screen, you can already tell that this panel isn't on like the high end of the LCD spectrum, so it isn't like super punchy or super vibrant the way you'd expect like, you know, the more expensive LCDs to look. It's still okay, but it is a little bit washed out when it comes to the colors. But you know, I think for this kind of price point, I'm not gonna be like complaining too much about it. It's a trade-off, right? You can either have speed or you can have really nice punchy colors. It's very rare that you can have both. To sort of like amp up your media viewing experience though, this smartphone does come with stereo speakers, which I will give you a quick demonstration of right now.
What's the best headphones for this much? You got any good cheap headphones, TWS headphones to recommend, right? Because it's popular now, so they want to use TWS headphones. So I was like, okay, fine, you know what? To answer the question once and for all, I was like, okay, let's just go on Shopee. So I went on Shopee and I bought all the headphones, the ones that look like actual headphones, not the ones that look like obvious scams that I could find on Shopee, all of them.
Okay, so it's not bad. Like, I have to say, it's pretty decent. It gets quite loud. Obviously, they're not super balanced because this is an earpiece stereo setup. So yeah, there are like cutouts here at the top to sort of indicate that they are proper stereo speakers, but honestly, it's still very heavily weighted towards the bottom firing speaker. But you know, if you listen to it as a set, it's not bad. It's pretty good. Of course, if you want to take your audio listening experience up a notch, you can always plug in your favorite pair of wired headphones or speaker to the 3.5mm headphone jack right at the top of the smartphone. Now though, I want to move on to what I believe is Xiaomi's big push with this smartphone, and that is the camera system. So it is a quad camera setup, but the star of the show is that main wide-angle camera because this has a 50 megapixel sensor and an f1.8 aperture lens. So it's a 50 megapixel main camera, and then you've got an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, you've got a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth camera. Initially, I expected like, oh wow, okay, this should be like the next step in terms of like elevating an entry-level smartphone camera capabilities, but when I did try to take some photos with it, quality was like definitely more on the entry-level side. Like it doesn't look a whole lot better than a lot of the other smartphones that you'd find at this price range, but you know, it's still okay. Like it's a serviceable camera, and that's it. Don't go in expecting like flagship level performance. Of course, if you're going in expecting flagship level performance for a entry-level device, then I think that's more of a problem that you have than the smartphone lah. Up front, in the little punch hole at the top, you'll find an 8 megapixel selfie shooter, which is again serviceable. It's not bad. It will do portrait mode selfies, and yeah, I think there's not a whole lot to complain here. And finally, I want to talk about the biometric security because this smartphone supports a fingerprint scanner and it is built into the power button at the side of the smartphone. The thing about this side-mounted fingerprint scanner though is not like the Redmi Note 10 series where they have like, you know, they talk about the whole arc fingerprint scanner thing. No, this time they've gone for a very much standard dimple with a flat power button. So it's easier for you to find and it's still easy to unlock. But the performance is a little bit slow. It's not the snappiest fingerprint scanner out there, but it will work and it is a fingerprint scanner. So that's that. Now, with the specs out of the way, I do want to talk about one thing that I do like about this smartphone, and that is, you know, the way it feels in your hand. So it's got a pretty decent build quality, like it looks really nice, and you know, it looks like a more expensive smartphone thanks to this frosted back finish. But just because it's frosted, don't think that it's not going to be a fingerprint magnet, because it absolutely is. And as you can see, just a couple of touches and we've already got big smudges. But you know, it goes a long way to make it feel like a more expensive smartphone. You know, when I picked this up, I got like Vivo X60 vibes, which is a good thing. Of course, not quite to the premium fit and finish with the same kind of heft, but it's a good feeling. Like, I'm not mad about this at all. But now I want to talk about performance. So MediaTek processor, a lot of people are going to be like worried about it. But I think performance is okay. It actually works. When it works, like this smartphone is pretty smooth. And of course the 90Hz display definitely helps make it feel like very responsive. Of course, it's not like a super high-end gaming smartphone because gaming performance on it, it's like a middle, like if you wanna talk about like between low graphics settings, medium graphics settings, and high graphics settings, this is definitely a medium graphics settings gaming phone. But you know, my colleague over at SCBM, Najib, he's played a bunch of games on this smartphone and he says that it's okay, like it's functional, plus the 90Hz screen on the games that it does support 90Hz, you know, it works really well and it helps add to that smoothness and butteriness that you would want from this kind of screen. But there is one caveat. In my experience using the smartphone, I think that there is some kind of like software bug, or like there's some kind of glitch somewhere that is causing the phone to act up a lot. Even during this shoot, we encountered like this smartphone completely froze up and it hang and like it refused to respond, forcing me to restart this smartphone like at least a few times. The phone hang again. Why? I don't know why. It's just, what the f***? Anyway, so that's kind of frustrating to see. I don't know if that is directly related to the processor performance. I don't think so, but I think it's a software thing, so I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that, you know, if it is a software thing, that maybe our device is like a unique case. And if it's not a unique case, I hope they can push some kind of OTA update, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to recommend this smartphone. I do also want to touch on the display for this smartphone. So Xiaomi obviously went for, like they made a choice, right? They went for an IPS panel with a fast refresh rate rather than an OLED panel with like a more standard 60Hz refresh rate. And you could make like a strong argument for either. You know, you could either have like the really vibrant, punchy colors and crisp contrast of that kind of OLED screen, or the fast, smooth, buttery refresh rate of like an IPS panel. Personally though, after looking at this screen, I think I would go for, I think I would choose the OLED screen with 60Hz refresh rate, which I think is kind of weird because normally I like the fast refresh rate. I think 90Hz makes it a really cool smartphone experience, but you know, I really do like that punchy, contrasty OLED. So yeah, that's my preference. Let me know which one you would prefer. Finally, I want to talk about the price of the smartphone. So the Redmi series, you know, this is like usually a sub 600 ringgit smartphone. The Redmi 9, for example, both variants, the base model and the top spec model, came in at under 600 ringgit, with the top spec model being 599 ringgit. This year though, with the Redmi 10, we don't have a single device that's priced under 600 ringgit. The base model with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage, that has prices starting at 649 ringgit. Whereas if you want this one with 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, that will be 749 ringgit. So that is quite a big price bump. I know like 50 bucks doesn't sound like a lot, but when it comes to the entry level market, 50 ringgit is quite a lot, especially when I don't think the experience is going to be hugely different. You could say that it is an upgraded camera, and it probably is. I don't remember the Redmi 9's camera being particularly great. But is that worth the price bump? A bit hard to say. Though I will say that the base model now has 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage, which is, you know, nice to see. That being said, with about 650 to 750 ringgit, you're actually looking at quite a lot of other devices that you could consider over this smartphone. For example, would be the Redmi Note 10 that has an OLED screen. You could consider that for about the same price if you can find it. You can also look at stuff like the Redmi 9T or the Poco M3. Both are, you know, pretty good competitors to this, and in the Poco's case, like I believe it's more affordable, so you can actually save some money for like a very similar experience. So I don't know why Xiaomi decided to not have a single Redmi 10 be priced under 600 ringgit. I personally think that that's a bit of a missed opportunity, because I think a lot of people like the pricing of their original Redmi devices. But you know, one of the theories is that it could be because they're trying to create more of a buffer to launch a smartphone like a Redmi 10C or a 10A, sort of like what they did with the Redmi 9 series, so that there's a bit more of a gap to like that really ultra entry-level device to this one. But yeah, with this kind of pricing and this kind of performance and specs, there's definitely more competition for the Redmi 10 than there probably was for its predecessor. And you know, I don't know if that will make this smartphone entirely worth it. I guess it will really depend on you. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of the brand new Redmi 10 series? Let me know in the comments section below. But yeah, this is where I'm going to end this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't worry, we will be checking out more new phones in the coming weeks, so make sure you're subscribed for that. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also like this video if you enjoyed it. You can also like us on Facebook to get our updates from there. But our home on the internet will always be at soyachinchao.com. Until next time, I'm Rory, and I will see you then. Bye.